Global warming? Well, listen, this sounded legit to me, so I thought I'd best do some research. I don't want to piss away on this one until I know what's up. I've got kids. Now, there's a lot of differing data, but as far as I can gather, the crux of it is over the last 100 years, the temperature of this planet has gone up 1.8 degrees. Am I the only one who finds that amazingly stable? You know, I'm always amazed, as per chaos theory, I don't wake up one morning and it's 3,000 degrees and I'm just a big Kingsford briquette and a pair of jammies. 1.8? Are you kidding me? I could go back to my hotel room tonight and futz with a thermostat for the next 3 or 4 hours. I could not detect that difference. You know, I'm kind of glad it went up. I'm always a little chilly anyway. And you know, the money I'm saving on sweaters, I put into a cookie jar to buy a 30-06 to blow a caribou's head off with.
So I wanted to play you this clip of Dennis Miller from 2003. So almost 20 years ago. And the reason I wanted to play it is because I wanted to show you what people thought. People like Dennis Miller, who considers themselves a conservative and also an intellectual, what they actually thought back in 2003 and what has happened now 20 years later. So I want to explain what Dennis Miller was talking about there, where he was talking about the 1.8 degrees. The thing that Dennis Miller failed to realize, or if he did, he was lying. What 1.8 degrees means is the way he seems to portray it in his special there. He talks about 1.8 degrees as like an average daily temperature. So say, for example, today it's 90 degrees. We're going to go up 1.8. That would be almost, what, 92 degrees? You know, if it's 90, you go up 1.8, 92. But what he didn't understand, or he was lying about if he did understand it, what the 1.8 degrees means that environmentalists and people that talk about climate change were referring to was 1.8 degrees globally, a global world temperature. And now that may not seem like a lot, but when you raise the temperature of the entire globe 1.8 degrees, what that does is it causes things called feedback loops. And I can explain feedback loops very simply as when you have places up in the Arctic, for example, where, and you can go Google this and you can see the pictures, where the permafrost in the soil is melting, you'll see the trees all leaning over and stuff like that. And the reason that happens is because the soil was once frozen, but now as the global temperature rises 1.8 degrees, that permafrost begins to melt. And the thing that's really significant about permafrost is it traps a lot of methane, a lot of creatures that died millions of years ago that were trapped in the ice. Well, as that permafrost melts, as the global temperature goes up 1.8 degrees, that methane is released. And what people don't understand is methane is a stronger global warming climate change gas than even carbon dioxide. So that's a feedback loop. And what happens is when you start putting all these feedback loops into effect, you can't stop them. And another really interesting feedback loop is the ocean. The ocean sequesters a lot of carbon. The ocean actually sequesters more carbon than the Amazon. I know people refer to the Amazon as the world's lungs, but really the ocean is the world's lungs, because the ocean sucks up way more carbon and it's way bigger than the Amazon. But what's interesting is the ocean sucks up more carbon, it causes the ocean to become more acidic. It raises its pH level. So it becomes more acidic, and that's why you see like the Great Barrier Reefs begin to die. And the Great Barrier Reefs and reefs in general are a great food source for plankton. The fish eat the plankton, larger fish eat it, and it goes up and up and up until humans. That's the, you know, the circle of our food. And so as the ocean becomes more acidic, eventually it begins to die. The smaller life dies off, which leads to the bigger life dying off, which leads to us. So that's why climate change is so important and why feedback loops are so important. And the reason I wanted to talk about this today is because I'm sure you've seen on the news about how, the Great Salt Lake is drying up and the environmental implications of that, or Lake Mead and Lake Powell is drying up, and how the Southwest is becoming a desert again, and how in parts of the United States, especially here in Texas where I live, where we're going through this horrible drought and our grid is under attack because of the heat. And even now in Europe, thousands of people are beginning to die in Europe because they're not used to the temperatures like we are here in the South. We have air conditioners. Most homes in France or England don't have air conditioners. And like today, for example, I was watching on the news that like parts of London are on fire. Not only are they dealing with the heat, the hot temperatures, but it's actually sparking fires in their city. And what people don't understand, which I think is very interesting, is the world has had 5 mass extinctions since its inception. And they say that we have entered the 6th mass extinction. And I know that human beings, it's not in our nature, it's in our nature to be hopeful. We were never good at seeing hopelessness. Human beings will always, even in cases of diversity, will always look for the brighter side. But I think in a lot of ways that's one of our downfalls, because we always think it's going to get better, and that keeps us from facing the hard truths. And what I think we're going to see, and I think we're starting to see the very beginnings of it, especially like with COVID and the massive heat waves and the droughts and things that we're seeing now, they're only going to get exponentially worse. And we're going to start seeing, which I suspect by 2030, and I'm being conservative here, but I think by 2030, we'll see over 1 billion deaths in other parts of the world due to starvation. And I think what happened in the 80s with the Africa droughts, it'll make the 80s look like a picnic. And I do think that we'll see over 1 billion deaths between now and then. I think it will get to a point in the United States where people, even liberals, will want to build the wall on the southern border, because we're going to see a huge influx of immigration, because down in South America, the heat and the humidity will get to a point where people won't be able to survive. There's a thing where human beings, because we continue to sweat, we sweat in order to cool our bodies down. And there's a condition which they call the wet bulb effect. And that's when at nighttime the humidity is so high and the temperature doesn't drop that human beings will go to sleep at night and will literally die from dehydration in their sleep, because as they sleep, their bodies will continue to sweat, and the humidity will never drop down low enough, and the temperatures will remain high, and people will literally go to sleep one night and not wake up because they will die of dehydration by the morning. And you can do research on this, which I've done. They're seeing, especially in South America, huge cases of patients needing to be on dialysis, and the reason why is because of dehydration, where they're working out in the fields and their kidneys are becoming damaged because of their severe dehydration because of high humidity levels. And I think that's going to cause an influx of people coming up to the north, because they'll get to a point where they can no longer live. And there are scientists out there that say that it'll get to a point where around the equator that people will no longer be able to live because it'll be too hot. Even in Saudi Arabia, they've talked about stopping the Hajj, which is the traditional trek to Mecca, because of the heat, because people won't be able to survive because the desert will be too hot and people will just die because of the heat. So I do believe as human beings, as a species, we have entered our mass extinction event. And I personally believe that by 2100 that the majority of the human population will be extinct. And I know that there's a lot of people out there that believe that, oh, Tesla can save us or whatever. And that's a pipe dream. It's a really awesome thought to think that we can create technology. But the problem is we have too much regulation, and we have too many politicians, and we have too much religious fanatics in our government that they'll never believe that we're in this bad a shape. You know, just look at Joe Manchin. Joe Manchin, he doesn't do it for religious beliefs. He does it because he gets paid by coal and oil. You know, he shoots down the Democrats' energy policies, their green energy policies, because of oil and coal that he gets paid from. And you have people like Marjorie Taylor Greene and Gates and Boebert and people like this that are going to continue to be in government, you know, that will never believe in climate change. They'll always believe that Jesus is going to come save them. They won't believe it until they're watching Americans dropping dead in the streets because of heat exhaustion and dying. So I just wanted to showcase this thing by Dennis Miller, because I thought it was really, because I remember watching that back when I was younger, and I thought as he did. And now 20 years later, you know, I remember thinking when people were talking about this 1.8 degrees rise, I too thought, oh man, who gives a shit? That's in 100 years. But look, in less than 20 years, look how bad it's gotten from 2003 to 2022. Just think how bad it's going to be in 20 more years. And me, I'm 48 years old. I suspect that if I live to old age, I'll probably die sometimes in the mid 2030s. If I'm lucky, I might make it to the 2040s. But I'll be gone. This won't be a worry of mine. And it'll be a worry of my daughter, who's 10 years old. She'll live to see the bad days come. And I hate that, but I know that there's nothing I can do about it, because I'll only live so long. And eventually I'll get old and I won't be able to do anything about it anyway because of my age. So I guess this is really because I don't really believe that we can change it. I believe that feedback loops have already gone into effect and we're just living on borrowed time anyway. So I guess I make this video to post on YouTube. Maybe someday my daughter or maybe her children will watch this and see if Grandpa was right. Bye. This is Dave, Zoe Zissels.